Hello and good evening, everybody, and I'd like to welcome everybody back to tonight's episode, and I am going to take a break from Album Rant, and I am instead going to bring you another episode of Rank the Albums. And as you know from the title of the video, I'm going to be focusing tonight on British hard rock, sometimes classified heavy metal artist Uriah Heep. And they have an incredibly rich discography, so I'm not going to waste too much more time here. But I would just like to remind you that this episode represents my subjective opinion, and I'm not trying to say this is the ultimate authority or anything, but if you kind of feel like I ranked your favorite album kind of low, please, by all means, correct me or tell me why you think I need to be corrected in the comments section. I definitely encourage that, and I appreciate that. Just please be respectful, no profanity, and no personal attacks. So anyways, I have a lot to say tonight, so I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to get right down to 25th place. And this one may actually not come as too much of a surprise to most people, because I think this one is one of their lesser appreciated albums, probably for good reason. But if you like this one, I'm sorry, but I really do not like 1980s Conquest, okay? This was really the end of an era. This would be the last album with lead keyboardist, longtime original member Ken Hensley. As for lead vocals, this would be the one and only appearance by John Sloman. And I've heard some people say that he's done very well in other projects, and that's awesome. And Uriah Heep, or on this album, I really did not really care for him, okay? But yes, this is just a band at this point that's just eroding away and just falling apart at the seams, and it's not very pleasant to listen to, okay? This music does not have much of a punch behind it. I'm not even sure if I can call it rock music. It starts out kind of promising with No Return, but even that song kind of drops the ball at some point, and it starts to get really, really irritating and kind of grinds on my nerves. But it does at least have some guitar behind it, but not nearly enough for me to give my endorsement on this one. Another song I kind of want to point out here is Fools. I have quite a lot of songs called Fools. I have one by Van Halen, one by Deep Purple. Well, there's also a song called Fools by Uriah Heep, and it's garbage. It's incredibly irritating. I don't like it at all. The only thing that I kind of was getting behind was Carry On. It's kind of fast, has some guitar behind it, but really it's not enough to save this thing. This is, in my opinion, their worst album. Now, we're going next to 24th place, which would be their second worst. And this may not come as much of a surprise to most people either, but it's going to be an album that came out a few years later in 1985, and that is Equator. And this would be the last album with lead vocalist Peter Goldby. I think that's his name, yeah. And his era started out very, very promising. I'm going to get to that in a second. But by this point, it is so obvious that the entire album was just MTV bait. A lot of artists were under a lot of pressure to produce very synth-heavy, radio-friendly pop music, and well, Uriah Heep definitely fell into that trap, and I think it's kind of a shame. But yeah, I mean, as far as these songs go, Rockorama starts out kind of promising, and I think it could have been a great song, but it just has too much of a pop overload on it, too many synths on it, and I just cannot get behind that one. Bad Blood is kind of ferocious. I kind of like it, but again, it is marred by the overabundance of synthesizers, okay? Lost One Love is a pretty stupid ballad. I do not like that one. Holding On is okay. Party Time is a pretty cliched party anthem, hence the title, and it doesn't really hit the mark. School's Burnin' is okay, but that's really the best I can say about this album. Yeah, I am not too big of a fan of Equator. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, I can say this. Going forward, there is at least something on every single album that I can at least appreciate. we got the dog crap out of the way, so now let's get to 23rd place, and this would be within the Bernie Shaw era. It was an album that came out in the late 90s. It was the last album, I believe, with longtime drummer Lee Kerslake, and that, of course, is Sonic Origami. And before I go even any further, I just gotta say this. The lineup on this album, I am very, very impressed by. We have Bernie Shaw on lead vocals, Mick Box on the guitar, we have Trevor Bolder on bass, Lee Kerslake on the drums, and then Phil Lanzin on the keyboards. Now, this lineup began in 1986, and it lasted all the way to, I think, 2007, actually. That is a 21-year tenure, and considering the turnover this band has had, that is really kind of saying something, okay? So let's just talk about these songs very quickly. The big issue that I have with this album, I did revisit it a couple of weeks ago, it's just flat, okay? There's not too much of a punch on it, but I mean, the music is pretty decent. I mean, some of the highlights are Between Two Worlds, I Hear Voices, Perfect Heart. I kind of want to talk about Heartless Land for a little bit because what I really appreciate about that one is it's, again, kind of diving into folk music. And that was a genre they kind of touched on in their early days, and I think it's actually kind of cool that they revisited that and everything. But yeah, I mean, they pull it off decently well, so I do like that one. However, there are a couple that don't quite hit the mark for me, such as In the Moment, which is track number 6. Shelter in the Rain is just kind of bland to me. Across the Miles, not too much of a fan of that one. And The Golden Palace. I find it kind of boring, kind of bland. It's 8+ minutes, kind of probably could have been chopped down a bit. But yeah, I mean, there are some decent tracks on here, but it's the sound that really kind of brings it down. And this thing is 13 tracks. I am not counting bonus tracks, by the way, on any of these. So as far as I'm concerned, 14 and 15 are not being considered. But they probably could have chopped this down to about 8 songs or so, and I think it would have been a lot tighter and a much better album. So, we are now on 22nd place, and this is going to be another one from the Bernie Shaw era. Same lineup, came out a few years earlier, and that is Different World. You know, pretty cool album for what it is, okay? I think they really did improve their sound during this era. This is a few years, about 6 years or so after the abomination of Equator, and I think they struck a very good balance between the keyboards and the rest of the band, which is something they really nailed in their early days. But Blood on Stone, pretty good rocker, starts things out pretty well. I do really like Which Way the Wind Blows. It's very slow. It's a little bit, well, it's not very slow, but it's slower, and it is kind of aggressive, which I really like. But yeah, there are a few here that don't quite do it for me. 3 through 5, I think, are kind of bland, such as All God's Children, and I gotta say, they kind of, during this era, at least from my perspective, it seems they touch on religious music a lot. And it's a theme that pops up quite a bit, and I didn't really quite care for it. All for One, not quite my cup of tea, nor is the title track. But things do start to pick up a little bit. I do like Step by Step. It's a little bit more upbeat. 7 Days is a little bit slower, but it's decent. And so is One on One, you know, pretty hard rocking, pretty good. Cross the Line may not be the best closer, but yeah, pretty cool album. Okay, 21st place. I am going to go all the way back to the 70s. Yes, one of their 70s albums actually did rank this low for me. And this was going to be the end of the John Lawton era, and it's going to be 1978's Fallen Angel. And man, is that cover art ridiculous or not, okay? I just gotta say that, okay? Now, much like Sonic Origami, I think my big issue with this album is just the sound. There's a lot of boogie rock on here, which may not really be my favorite genre, but if you really like that, I really am happy for you. But some of the highlights, I do like Woman of the Night, pretty good opener. I do like Falling in Love. I do like One More Night. It's a boogie rocker, but I think it does kind of hit the mark. What You Say is pretty good, and same thing with Save It. Very heavy song. Really love it. And I'm Alive closes things out very, very well. But yes, there are a couple of duds on here. I do not like the title track. Sorry, the title track closes things. And the title track is a little bit too soft for me and too melodic. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just don't think this pulls it off very well. But the worst song on here is definitely Come Back to Me. This thing sounds like a really, really bad Bohemian Rhapsody knockoff. And you probably figured this out by now. I do not like Bohemian Rhapsody, so that's not exactly helping things, okay? But yeah, pretty solid album, 21st place. 20th place is actually going to be the one that came right before it, and that is 1977's Innocent Victim. And man, that is a cool album cover, I just gotta say. It's if you don't like snakes, I understand, but man, that's creepy. But yeah, Keep On Riding. Is that what it is? Yeah. Keep On Riding. I think that's a pretty, again, it's a boogie anthem, it's a boogie rocker, but I think it starts off things pretty well. Other ones I like off of this are Flying High. I do like Roller. Free and Easy. One of the heaviest songs they ever did. Man, that guitar intro is just crunching, and I just really, really love it. Okay? Do love Free and Easy. Same thing with the dance, and Choices closes things out very well, I thought, okay? Some of the ones I may not really like that much. I'm not too big of a fan of Illusion, and I'm also not a fan of Free Me. Free Me sounds a lot more like soul music, and kind of has a gospel edge to it, if that makes any sense or anything. Just again, may not be my favorite genre, but if you like it, I think that's really, really awesome. Cheat and Lie is also not quite my favorite, but yeah, really pretty cool album once again. And so that was 20th place. So now we're going to come to 19th place. And this was another album I recently revisited. And I just gotta say, this initially was one that I kind of just wrote off. I actually ended up enjoying this one a lot more than I thought I would. It's again out of the Bernie Shaw era, the 90s era. 1995's Sea of Light. Yeah, first of all, I love that album cover. That looks like a Yes album cover, actually. Is it the same artist who drew it? Maybe, I don't know, but I just gotta say, I really do like that album cover. This is a pretty heavy album, actually, and that's interesting because it's kind of sandwiched between two albums that I thought were a little bit flat and uninspired, but I really found myself really loving this one, okay? I mean, just about every song on here I really enjoy, actually. I really love Against the Odds, a very heavy opener, okay? Sweet Sugar, oh man, I love that one, okay? Great rhythm, great guitar work. It is just completely on point. That's just one I can just sing along and just enjoy, okay? I also like Time of Revelation. Mistress of All Time. This is actually a very interesting song because it has more of a mystical feel behind it. And it kind of doesn't really sound much like what they were really doing around this time period, but it's really kind of bringing back some prog influences, and I actually really do love Mistress of All Time. That was one that really could have fallen flat on its face, but it didn't, and I gotta give my endorsement of that one. I love Mistress of All Time. Universal Wheels is also good. Fear of Falling, which is track number 6. It's also really, really heavy, a definite recommendation. Spirit of Freedom is good, and really the album keeps things up pretty well. But there is one low point. I just gotta say, Dream On, not good, okay? It's very slow and very soft, and that would be fine if it was backed up by strong songwriting, but it's just not. It's kind of obnoxious, actually, and it's unfortunately a dark stain on what I thought was a really, really solid album, but overall, it does not ruin the album. It's still a very, very heavy album. It's a very well-written album, and I really think you should check this one out, because this is definitely one that probably falls through the cracks quite a bit. Okay, I don't even know what I'm on now. What am I? 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, 19. I'm on 18th place now, yes. I am actually going to go to the David Byron era. Yes, some of their other stuff is really that good. And this was actually the last album with both David Byron and bassist John Wetton. I believe that's his name, yes. And it's 1976's High and Mighty, okay? Pretty solid album, very good songwriting. David Byron was an absolute master at his craft, and it's really a shame we lost him so early, but yes, he has tragically passed away, as have most of the people during this era, unfortunately. But one way or another starts things out. This one was actually sung by John Wetton, I want to say. I know it's not David Byron, but it's a really solid opener. It's pretty fast, pretty heavy, and I like it. Weep in Silence is also good, and so is Make a Little Love, which is track number 9. That one is also really, really heavy, which I think you definitely need to check out. There are a couple of ones that on here that don't quite do it to me, or do it for me, whoops. I may get some flack for this one, and if I offended you, I am really sorry. I have never really liked Misty Eyes. I know that's one of their most well-known songs. I know it's definitely considered to be one of the highlights for this album. It just never really did it for me. I'm also not too big of a fan of Can't Keep a Good Band Down. Again, it's definitely delving into boogie, and I don't think they pull it off as well as they may have in some other parts of their tenure, okay? Confession is just a piano ballad, and it's not really that great. But, I mean, there is enough good stuff on here for me to really elevate this one. So, yeah. High and Mighty. Strong album. Okay, next is going to come the album that came right before it. And as you probably know, it is 1975's Return to Fantasy. And this is the first album with John Wetton. Gary Thane, I believe, yes, he exited the band, the album before it. And it really was a shame, because that lineup is what many consider to be the classic lineup. But this one was David Byron on lead vocals, Mick Box on lead guitar, John Wetton on bass guitar, Lee Kerslake on the drums, and Ken Hensley on the keyboards. Okay, the title track is considered to be, by many, once again, to be a really, really great Uriah Heep song. It is considered to be the highlight of this album. And yes, it is really good. But from what I had heard about it, before I picked this album up, I was expecting a very aggressive, a very heavy and magical and mystical and proggy intro, and I don't think I really quite got it. I think the song could have been heavier, and I noticed that this album really lacked the punch of some of the previous albums, and I thought that was a definite shame, and that's why this one is a little bit lower than one may have thought, okay? Shady Lady is another boogie rocker. Really, really love it. Devil's Daughter is also good. Beautiful Dream is very dark and very eerie. Some may actually find it scary. Maybe. I think it's pretty creative for what it is, okay? It's definitely got the atmosphere down. I'll give it that. And David Byron is doing some really, really just bizarre falsetto work. And King Diamond, of all people, has said that David Byron is one of his main influences, one of his main lyrical, and as far as his vocals go, he cites him as an influence. And I can really see where that comes from when I listen to Beautiful Dream. I definitely hear the King Diamond influences, or well, with King Diamond, I hear the Uriah Heep influences from Beautiful Dream, so yeah, I like it. I am not the biggest fan of Prima Donna. It sounds very jazzy, and that's not exactly what I'm looking for. Why Did You Go? I also don't really like, but some of the other strong songs on here, Showdown is good, And A Year of the Day closes things out pretty well. So yeah, pretty good album. Not perfect, but pretty good. Okay, next one is going to be the very first album with Bernie Shaw, and it's going to be the very first album with that lineup that I was just talking about that lasted over 20 years. And you've probably figured out by now, it is 1989's Raging Silence. Yes, okay? This was the one that came out right after Equator. I'm guessing that the reviews on that one, both critically and commercially, were not exactly what they were hoping for. So Peter Golby is out, and who else is out? Yes, John Sinclair, who was their keyboardist at the time, he was also out and replaced by Phil Lanzon. And like I said, this lineup lasted a very, very long time. Starts out with a cover of Hold Your Head Up. I like it. You know, hold your head up. Yeah, hold your head up. Hold your head high. I think I said that correctly. If not, well, too late. But decent cover. It's an Argent cover, actually. I really, really like it, actually. Blood Red Roses is another highlight from here. So is Voice on My TV. Rich Kid, which is track number 4, is very, very hard rockin'. I really love that one. Excuse me. Bad Bad Man is also good. Rough Justice, which is the very last song. It is, I think, probably the strongest track on here. I really love Rough Justice, and this is another song that's probably fallen through the cracks for a lot of people, but Bernie Shaw is on his absolute A game here, okay? He is really doing great. The rhythm is great, and it's just a great sing-along track. The only real duds on here, Cry Freedom's not quite my favorite. I'm not too big a fan of More Fool You, and When the War is Over is kind of slow and kind of whiny in my opinion. But yeah, great album. Raging Silence. Okay, next. Oh, what am I on now? 4, 3, 2, 1, 20, 19, 18, 77. I think I'm on 15th place now. Is that right? Okay, I'll go with that. The next one is actually going to be the second album with Peter Golby on lead vocals. You probably know what this one is. Came out in 1983, Head First. I've heard some people trash this album. I'm not quite sure why, because I think this thing is quite the beast. I think it's really, really awesome. And they were going through a very definite 80s heavy metal phase around this time. And it's definitely a holdover, maybe not a holdover, but a continuation of the album that came before it. And I really like this one, okay? Definitely because the guitar is very, very ferocious and punching and heavy. And I think it's also backed up by some very solid songwriting. The lineup on this one was Peter Golby on lead vocals, Nick Box on lead guitar. It was actually Bob Daisley on bass. Yes, that Bob Daisley from Ozzy Osbourne and Rainbow. He was in this band for 2 albums. We had Lee Kerslake on the drums and then John Sinclair on the keyboards. So yeah, 3 out of the 5 members played with Ozzy Osbourne actually. Yeah, interesting. So gotta zoom in right there. Yeah. Other Side of Midnight, great opener, okay? Very heavy. I also like Stay on Top. Very thunderous, very heavy. Red Lights is another highlight for me. So is Straight Through the Heart. But really, guys, Weekend Warriors. I think it's awesome, okay? I know it's the last track, and many people have tuned out by this point, but it closes things out really well. It's very fast, very ferocious. Definitely need to check that one out, okay? Lonely Nights is kind of a pop ballad. Maybe not pop ballad, but it's definitely teetering on that. May not quite be the best one, but overall, this is a great album, and it's another definite recommendation. Pretty much going forward, all these albums are amazing. So the next one, and this is going to be the last, or not the last album, actually the first album without David Byron. He was, I think, let go after the High and Mighty album, and he was replaced by John Lawton for 1977's Firefly. And yeah, John Lawton's a pretty funny guy, actually, but he had recently been with a band called Lucifer's Friend. And I have talked about Lucifer's Friend on this channel before. I really, really enjoy them. I've reviewed their first album, and I also talked about them in my top 50 artists of all time countdown. Lucifer's Friend was awesome. And unfortunately, I don't think his material with Uriah Heep was quite as strong as maybe some of his material with Lucifer's Friend. But it's not without its merits. I mean, he still did a great job here, and this is a very well-written album. Now, as I said before, they traded out their lead vocalist. David Byron is out. John Lawton is in. They also traded out their bass player. This would be the very first album that had a longtime bassist, Trevor Bolder, on it. And he did leave for a brief period in the 80s, but after that, he was basically with the band all the way up to his death, I believe, which was in the mid-2010s, I want to say. If I'm incorrect about that, please politely correct me, okay? But again, we have John Lawton on lead vocals, Nick Box on lead guitar, Trevor Bolder on bass guitar, Lee Kerslake on drums, and Ken Hensley on the keyboards. And yeah, starts off with Hanging Tree. Really love that one. Who Needs Me is another boogie rocker, but I still like it. Been Away Too Long is great as well, okay? Now, Wise Man. This is kind of the ballad of the album, and I'm not too big of a fan of it. Again, like some of the other stuff that came out during this era, it's definitely delving on soul music, and that is really not what I'm all about. If you really like that one, I'm really happy for you. I just really did not, okay? But Do You Know It's Good? Rollin' On is very dark and moody, and man, that bass kind of sets the stage and keeps the rhythm. It's a very interesting arrangement, but I think it works really well, okay? Sympathy is what's considered by many to be one of the highlights from this album, but I gotta say, I actually really do like the title track, okay? Starts out with a very mystical feeling to it, and I think it works very well. And then about halfway through, after that little intro, it starts picking up a bit, and it gets a little bit faster, but this is actually what I believe is the last time that Ken Hensley actually took lead vocals. He actually sings this one. I'm not too sure why, but he does, but I thought it was a great return to form and a great closer from a great Uriah Heep album. So yeah, there we go. Okay, I think that basically concludes the bottom half. Let me just check. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, I'm at the halfway mark, okay? So this is going to be what I believe is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This is number 13, 13th place. And I'm going to flash forward a bit. I am going to go to some of their more recent stuff, and I am going to say for my 13th place, it is going to be 2014's Outsider. Yes, their more recent stuff is really that good, okay? I know a lot of times we have these bands like maybe Metallica and Deep Purple and who else? Yes, and who else is still putting out music? Def Leppard, they're still putting out music right now, and a lot of people just say, you know, they're past their prime, they're past their heyday, it's never going to be that good, I just want to stick to their early stuff. Well, guys, I am telling you, their later stuff is really, really awesome in my opinion, and Outsider is a great album. This was unfortunately the very first time, for a long time actually, that Trevor Bolder was not in the band. He had departed by this point, but ever since they kind of went through a reimagining in the late 2000s, I just thought that this band was just completely and totally on fire, okay? The sound is great. The songwriting is solid. The rhythm is very, very grooving. And just look at these songs right here, okay? Starts off with Speed of Sound. Speed of Sound is a very emotional yet very rockin' opener. 1 minute is great. The Law. Oh my God, I really love that one, okay? Such a great rhythm and such a thunderous anthem. The Outsider is great. Rock the Foundation. Jesse is also great. But what may actually be my favorite song on here is actually the album closer, Say Goodbye. Again, it's a song at the end. A lot of people have tuned out by this point, but man, the rhythm is just so unique and so rockin'. I have just got to give my full endorsement to Say Goodbye. Every time I hear that one, I just do not want to turn it off. And guys, I am telling you, if you have not heard Outsider and pretty much anything past this point, you really need to hear it because you're depriving yourself of some great music if you don't. Okay, I am guessing, and I keep losing track, but I'm guessing now I'm in 12th place, I want to say. Yeah, I'll go with that. I might have lost track. It's okay. But I am going to go with their most recent effort, 2023's Chaos and Color. Now, I'm not too big of a fan of that album art or that cover art, but, you know, it's okay. Got a nice little digipack here. No, it opens up. Ooh, look at that. But the most important thing is on the back because that is the track list. This one still continued the very heavy sound that they adopted in the late 2000s, as I kind of just said. And I still think it's backed up by very, very strong songwriting, okay? Save Me Tonight is the opener. Really love that one. Other highlights are Hurricane, Golden Light, Fly Like an Eagle is a straight up metal song. That probably my favorite song on here is actually Fly Like an Eagle, okay? Closer to Your Dreams is the album closer, and I think that's also a really good one. The only one that I'm really not quite feeling is One Nation, One Sun. It's probably a little bit too long, it's a little bit slow, and it doesn't quite hit the mark for me. But overall, great album, their most recent. I know these guys have gone through so many lineup changes. This is really a different band than what was very popular back in the 70s. Mick Box is the only original member left, and two of their guys joined in 1986, and the other two guys came in just recently. So it's, again, very different from what everyone really, really loved back in the day. But again, even though it's a different band, really, it's still great, and it's great music. You need to hear it. Okay, I'm guessing I'm now in 11th place. Yeah, we'll go with that. This is going to be another one from this era. It's actually the one that came right before it. I believe this came out in 2018. Livin The Dream. Yes, and again, it is that good, okay? It still kind of adopts the same sound that was previously established, and they continue it, and they put out some really, really good music, okay? Ones that I really like are Grazed by Heaven, the opening. The title track I love. It starts off with Bernie Shaw singing by himself, and it's kind of an a cappella arrangement, I guess it is. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But man, it is just so catchy and so grooving. I really like it. I sometimes set my alarm to Livin The Dream, the title track, and it is just a great way to wake up to. I actually did that last night, and it just really put me in such a good mood, ready to start the day. Really love it, okay? Other really good ones. Knocking at My Door is another highlight. So is Rocks in the Road, and this one kind of sounds like Deep Purple to me. And maybe not classic Deep Purple, but it sounds a lot like more recent Deep Purple, at least in my opinion. I've often compared these guys with Deep Purple, and it's just kind of interesting that even today, the stuff they're putting out sounds very, very similar, or at least I can see some similarities, even though there are some definite differences, okay? Falling Under Your Spell. That's another one. It's also very fast. Really love that one. And it closes out very well with Dreams of Yesteryear. I found myself really, really enjoying that one. So we are now coming up on 10th place. Now in the top 10. And things are really going to start heating up. And I am going to go with one that came out a few years prior. And it is 2011's Into the Wild. Yes, this one really is that good. We are getting very close to their classic material. I would say, aside from what the band is most well known for, from maybe like 1970 to 1974, I would say the 2008 to present era is probably their second best era. It really is that good once again. But Into the Wild starts off with Nail on the Head. I cannot get enough of Nail on the Head, okay? It is just such a catchy song. You gotta hit the nail on the head, hit the nail right on the head. I think I might have said that incorrectly, sorry, but I did my best. But it's great. I really love Nail on the Head. Other things, I really love I Can't See You. Very crunching, very grooving guitar riff. The title track is great. Money Talk is also great. I also love Trail of Diamonds. Southern Star is awesome, okay? It's very slow, yet very aggressive. And I don't know if you all really agree with this. It almost sounds like pirate music. It almost, when I listen to it, I feel like I'm on a pirate ship just sailing towards the Southern Stars, towards the Southern Cross, and it's just kind of a feeling that I get when listening to it. But yes, Southern Star I really, really love, okay? The only kind of dud on here, the one that doesn't quite work for me, is probably Kiss of Freedom, which is the closer. But yeah, great album. Okay, 9th place is going to be their very first album in a very long time. After Sonic Origami, I mean, the band was still together or anything. They just weren't really putting out a lot of records. And it was actually, 10 years after Sonic Origami before they put out their next record. This would be the very first one in a long time that did not have longtime drummer Lee Kerslake, and he has now sadly passed away. May he rest in peace. But yes, it's that one. 2008's Wake the Sleeper. It's that, again, it's, again, probably one that a lot of people have kind of, ignored or put on the back burner, but you really need to check this one out. I have really come to appreciate the Bernie Shaw era, and this is one of my absolute favorites, okay? What we have over here, the title track is awesome. The title track comes out punching, comes out kicking. It's very, very fast. It's very electric, and the band just sounds so rejuvenated, and I am so glad they came back. What's kind of interesting about this one is the only real vocals that are on this one is just Bernie Shaw saying the title of the song, Wake the Sleeper. And it's a very interesting approach, but a very, very definitely strong and interesting approach, but I really love that one. Other highlights are Overload. I love Tears of the World. This one is very fast. Light of 1,000 Stars kind of has an emotional kick behind it, but it works very, very well. I do like Book of Lies, Ghosts of the Ocean, and War Child closes things out so well. It's a great album closer. The only thing, or the only one that I really don't think is that phenomenal is probably going to be What Kind of God, which is track number 7. Again, every time they seem to touch on religious music, just something doesn't quite sit with me. Maybe it's religious music. I haven't quite analyzed the lyrics, but it's probably the weakest song on here, but still very, very strong. Wake the Sleeper. Love it. Okay, we are now in the top 8. Yes, this is going to be 8th place. And this is the one that actually came out right after my least favorite. Right after Conquest. 1982's Abominog. And yeah, I know that album cover looks completely ridiculous. Looks like it's very Spinal Tap in nature, if that makes any sense. But it's a really amazing record. The band basically imploded after Conquest. John Sloman was out, okay? Mick Box still stuck around, but Trevor Bolder was out. Chris Slade was out. Ken Hensley was out. So Ken Hensley is basically by this point no longer in the band, and he has also tragically passed away. The lineup on this one is the same lineup as Head First. Peter Dolby on lead vocals, Mick Box on lead guitar, Bob Daisley on bass guitar, Lee Kerslake on the drums, and then John Sinclair on the keyboards. Now, Too Scared to Run has a very crunching guitar intro at the very beginning. I love it. I love Chasing Shadows. Running All Night with the Lion. I cannot get enough of that one. It just sucks me in, and it just really, really gets my attention, gets me grooving. I really love Running All Night with the Lion. That's The Way It Is. May not be the best one, but it's okay. But I do like Prisoner and Hot Persuasion and Think It Over. Believe it or not, this is actually a remake. They actually did record this song during the Conquest sessions. I think it ended up being a B-side, I want to say, but it was absolutely terrible, as was the majority of that album. But Think It Over, on this album, the re-recording, it sounds much better. It sounds so rejuvenated, so re-energized, and I just really have to give my full endorsement of this one. So again, this is an album that's really outside their classic era. Like I said, by this point, Mick Box is the only original member left. It was definitely a reimagining of the band, but it sounds like pure, straight up 80s heavy metal, okay? It's very slick, very aggressive, very electric. I really gotta say, you need to check out Abominog. This one is so good that I even own it on vinyl also. It's really that great, and I really think it's an awesome album. So now, by this point, all we have left is their classic era. And so let's get right underway. Number 7, 7th place, is going to be the last album from the classic era. It is going to be Wonderworld from 1974. This was the last one with Gary Thane on bass guitar. This one was, of course, like I said, David Byron on lead vocals, Nick Box on lead guitar. We had Gary Thane on bass guitar, Lee Kerslake, and Ken Hensley. I think this one is incredibly underrated, okay? This is one that I really do not think gets enough attention, and again, I probably rank this higher than a lot of people, but I stand by it. Wonderworld. The keyboards accompany this song so well. The title track is great. It's like down, 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 down. And man, Ken Hensley was just such a beast on the keyboards. He made a synthesizer sound so incredibly heavy. It's awesome. Suicidal Man, another great song. The Shadow and the Wind. This is another one that does not get talked about enough. This one I really love, okay? It starts out very slow. It's kind of building in a bit. And it does start to pick up after about the minute mark, after that intro is done. But it just moves so well. It's so groovy. It's got such a great rhythm. I really love The Shadow and the Wind. So Tired is decent. Something or Nothing is great. And it closes out very, very nice with Dreams. And it actually alludes to a previous song that I'm going to get to in a second, actually. So yeah, Wonderworld, 1974. Great album. 6th place is going to be the one that came right before it. It is going to be one that I have reviewed before on Album Rant, and that is Sweet Freedom. Yes, 8 tracks on this one. And it kicks off with Dreamer. And that was the one that kind of made another appearance in Dreams, which was the last song off of Wonderworld. Within the song Dreams, you can hear snippets of Dreamer, which I think is rather interesting and everything. But yeah, it's a great opener, okay? And it's got kind of a staccato feel going for it. It's kind of like Dreamer, Dreamer, Dreamer. I really love it. Stealin'. Oh, man. Stealin' is phenomenal, okay? Starts out very slow, very moody. I feel like when I listen to it, I envision a cowboy just riding his horse at dawn, seeing the sunset, and just enjoying the air, enjoying the openness, and enjoying nature. It's really kind of a peaceful feeling. But then it starts moving, it starts grooving, and man, that rhythm is just great. It's not very fast, it's got a very swinging beat to it, but man, that chorus is like, I'm stealing when I should have been buying. It's awesome. One Day may not be the best song on here, but it's really great. Sweet Freedom, the title track. I think most people usually point to this one as one of the highlights from the album, and I really do like it. I think the chorus could have been a little bit better. I mean, it's just David Byron going, "Sweet freedom," and it sounds kind of soft and kind of dreary to me. But everything before that, the verses have got such an emotional kick to it. I really, really love it. And that song is always going to remind me of a particular incident in my life, which maybe I'll disclose at one point. But then we have If I Had the Time, kind of slow, kind of dreary, but, pretty solid. But 7 Stars. This one is also delving very much into folk music, and I love 7 Stars. I know it's a completely ridiculous song. We have David Byron singing the alphabet in the chorus. I'm not quite sure why he's doing that. I'm sure it fits into the theme somehow, but it's just such a very silly song, a very ridiculous song, but everything about it just clicks. The guitar is awesome. Like I said, it is delving into folk music, but it just works, okay? Ken Hensley is killing it on the keyboards as per usual. The bass is on, and David Byron is on point, okay? Circus is kind of a ballady song, kind of soft, but it ends with the mighty Pilgrim. And I said this before, Ken Hensley was able to make a Moog synthesizer sound so heavy, and it is so apparent on Pilgrim. Okay, this thing is about a little over 6 minutes or so. I think that's how long it is, and it just grips me from the very beginning. And the ending, man, that outro is just dome. Such a thunderous outro, and this is another song that just grabs me from the very beginning. I think Pilgrim is probably the best song on here. If not, it's either Stealin' or 7 Stars. My opinion changes quite frequently every time I listen to it. But yes, Sweet Freedom came out in 1973, classic album. So now we are going to come to 5th place. And this is actually the one that came right before it in 1972. We have The Magician's Birthday. Great album. And by the way, that cover art is great also. Again, it kind of looks like it kind of looks like it's a Yes album, if that makes any sense or so. Just the artwork. I'm not sure if it was the same person doing the artwork, but whoever it is did a great job. This was also released on Mercury Records. Sunrise, definite Uriah Heep classic. Has a nice little, keyboard intro, and it just starts picking up, and it's kind of doomy also. It's got a very good beat to it. Part of it's just like, don't, really love Sunrise. Spider Woman is kind of a boogie song once again. It's pretty good. It's Spider Woman, doom, and I really like that one. Rain is a piano ballad and not quite my favorite, but I do love Sweet Lorraine. I think this is the song that most people really remember from this album, and to be honest, when I was first getting into Uriah Heep, I only had a Greatest Hits CD, and Sweet Lorraine was on there, and all I really remembered was the chorus where he's singing the title of the song, and I kind of thought it was kind of a dud, but after re-listening to it, even though the chorus is probably the weakest part of the song, I think the rest of it works really well, and great rhythm once again, and the entire band is still on point. But my favorite from this album is definitely the title track, okay? This one is more of a prog number. It's over 10 minutes, and it's definitely multi-part, multi-sectioned. And I gotta say, it doesn't really start out that well. It's the beginning, the first couple of minutes, it's pretty fast, which I really like, but then it kind of goes into this one segment. It only lasts about a minute or so, but it's very slow, and it's just bizarre, and he's kind of going, "Happy birthday." I probably said that incorrectly. And we have kazoos going on in the background. I just don't really like that segment. But it fortunately does not last very long, because after that, it goes into an explosively fast guitar rhythm, and it just keeps jamming and jamming and jamming for like 7 minutes or so, maybe 6 minutes or so. But that is one of the heaviest outros I have heard from these guys, and I really love the outro, or maybe the entire second half of The Magician's Birthday. Overall, this is a really solid album, one of their classics, and you probably have already checked this one out, but if you haven't, definitely do it. All right, guys, 4th place. Most of you were probably expecting me to rank this one number 1. This is considered to be number 1 by a lot of people. I respect that. I understand that. For me, this is not number 1, but guys, it's number 4. I am still ranking this one very, very high, and I'm going to speak very highly of it. But it's 1972's Demons and Wizards, and once again, great cover art. Give credit where credit's due. The Wizard is an acoustic song. You might be thinking it might not quite be my cup of tea because, I prefer hard rock and heavy metal. It's great, okay? It has some of the best acoustic work I have ever heard from an artist, and it opens things up very well. Such a catchy song and such a great opener. I mentioned before that King Diamond was highly influenced by Uriah Heep, and he actually uses the Wizard to open his concerts. Well, I've seen King Diamond twice, and he used the Wizard to open both of the times I saw him. Whether that's something he's always done, I do not know, but he did the 2 times I saw him, and I thought it was really great, okay? We have Traveler in Time, and Mick Box is very well known for his wah-wah-wah guitar work, and it is very apparent on Traveler in Time. I think it's really catchy, and I think it's a great song. So is Easy Living. This one just comes right out swinging from the very beginning. The guitar, the bass, the keyboards are all fully on point right when this song begins, and it just never really lets up. It just keeps going and going and going, and it is a great song, okay? This is probably the big radio hit from Demons and Wizards, or it's probably at least the song most people are most well familiar with. It's a very catchy song, and I like it. So is Poet's Justice. However, I'm very sorry. You might really love this song out there, but I am not the biggest fan of Circle of Hands. Not a bad song, okay? It's still very solid, but Circle of Hands was not quite always my favorite. Part of the reason is this. I got this album back in college, and when I was in college, I had to get up really early to go to a school to do a research assignment there. And I was really in a hurry. I was very tired, and I was stuck in traffic. And that song was playing, and it was just in my head over and over again, especially the today's, only yesterday's, tomorrow's segment. And just that song is always going to remind me of that, but still, solid number, but probably one of the weaker ones on here. Rainbow Demon has not always been my favorite either, but still, great prog number. All My Life is great, and then we have Paradise / The Spell, which is kind of 2 songs combined into one. Much like The Magician's Birthday, it's another big prog number, but it closes things out very well. It's got a lot of interesting segments within it, and I think Demons and Wizards is one of the very best Uriah Heep albums. This is also the very first one with the classic lineup. This would last from Demons and Wizards all the way to Wonderworld. So now we're going to go back to the very beginning. We are now in 3rd place. This is top tier Uriah Heep. And 3rd place is going to go to their 2nd album, 1971 Salisbury. Yes, it's that good. I believe there are 2 different editions out there. There's the UK edition, and then there is the US version. I have the UK version. I have the original version, and I do believe this is the original artwork, so we have that out of the way. Bird of Prey. Oh, man. Such a heavy rocker, such an anthemic number. It's just incredible, okay? And it's so creative, and that middle part is like dun 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 dun. And David Byron, he sounds like he's performing an opera, believe it or not. But it's just such a creative approach, and I love it. Fun fact, guys, I actually have the vinyl for this album also, and I swear, the version that's on the vinyl, it sounds different than the CD version, okay? I have Bird of Prey on this album. On another album, it's a bonus track, and I have it on a Greatest Hits CD, and the vinyl version sounds different than all of the versions that I have on CD. All the ones I have on CD sound the same. There are some more harmonies in the vinyl version that are not on the CD version, and I really think that you ought to check that out because it's very creative. So I think they may have edited something out with the CD release. I could be wrong about that, but I'm just saying it sounds different, okay? The Park is great. Time to Live is great. Then we have Lady in Black. This one is also folk music, but that doesn't mean it's bad. In fact, it's really, really good, actually. It is very slow. It's very dark, but it's also very mystical and magical. And Ken Hensley actually sings this one, and I think it's because David Byron had no interest in singing. I don't think he liked it or something. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But it is a Uriah Heep classic, and it's just such a haunting ballad. I really, really love it. At first, I just kind of heard the first little bit of it, the first couple of intro or opening seconds or so. I was like, it's an acoustic number. It's probably not that good. It is good. You need to check it out. High Priestess is also sung by Ken Hensley, I believe. This one's a little bit more upbeat and a little bit more fast, but that's not mean it's bad or anything. But then it concludes with the title track. The title track, I believe, is their longest song out of their entire discography. It's over 16 minutes. It is multi-part, it is progressive rock, and I absolutely love it. If I had to give a minor nitpick, it is led by what sounds like a brass orchestra at the very beginning. And that may be a turnoff for some people. Maybe not fully for me, but it's a great song. And there is an edited version out there. And in fact, the edited version is a bonus track on this edition. And you got to hear the full thing because you get the full experience from the full thing. And it's a very great prog number and a great Uriah Heep track. Okay, number 2. This is going to be their very first album. This was released in 1970. Yes, they go back that far. We have 1970s, very heavy, very Umble. I think I said that correctly. It's either Eavy or Eavy. If I said it wrong, I'm sorry, but it's okay. But starts off with Gypsy. Great guitar intro, like and then it just stops for a second and goes into that thunderous opener. It's like don't. Such a heavy opener, such a heavy rocker. And this is one of the all-time most well-known Uriah Heep songs. I own 2 of their live albums. It appears on both of those live albums, and I just really, really enjoy hearing it. This was the very first Uriah Heep song, and it starts out very well. David Byron is completely killing it, okay? He is such a talented vocalist. Walking in Your Shadow, very slow, but also very, very crunching. I love it. I do like Come Away Melinda. Lucy Blues, I believe, was replaced by Bird of Prey on the US release. And to be honest, Bird of Prey is a better song than Lucy Blues, but Bird of Prey is on Salisbury, so I'll let it go. Dream Mare. Awesome. And man, that vocalization, at least throughout it, it's like da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da. Awesome. I love Real Turned On, and I'll Keep On Trying. And of course, Wake Up, Set Your Sights is a great closer. But of course, guys, I am now up to first place. You have probably figured it out by now. You probably figured this one would be either first or second, and well, now your question is answered. It's number 1, 1971's, their third album, Look at Yourself. And I know this isn't really noticeable with the CD, but the vinyl version actually has a mirror right there. So when you look at it, you are looking at yourself. Get it? Everything about this album just comes together. The title track is very fast. and the keyboards are complementing it so well. I probably did that very badly, but it's all right. Ken Hensley also sings this one. From what I understand, David Byron wasn't available when they were recording it, so Ken Hensley did it. But David Byron does perform and sing on it on the live albums that he's on, that this song was performed on. Very, very heavy, and man, that keyboard from Ken Hensley, it's just adding to the heaviness. I Want to Be Free, such an underrated Uriah Heep song, okay? It starts out very heavy, and then it just stops for a bit. And David Byron is singing all by himself. And again, at that moment in the song, it kind of sounds like folk music, but then things just start picking up and goes, don't. Such a heavy rhythm to it. And again, we have kind of a soft section, kind of a heavy section. And you might think that those two conflicting styles are not going to gel very well with each other, but they absolutely do. July Morning is the big prog number from this album. Starts out with a Moog synthesizer, but things just keep building up and building up and building up. Gets a little soft for a bit. David Byron comes in, and then he's got that la 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 thing going on. And that might be kind of a turnoff for some people, but I think it really adds another layer of mysticism to the song, and I love it. Tears in My Eyes is one of the songs that most people remember from this album, and it's a pretty straightforward rocker, but I still love it nonetheless. It's really, really good. And again, David Byron's doing this la 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 thing during it, and it's again a very interesting approach, and it goes very well. Shadows of Grief, very heavy, very hard rocking, and so haunting. Okay, that middle. We have David Byron doing his whole falsetto thing, and it just sets a very moody and very dark atmosphere. It's great. What Should Be Done is a piano ballad, quite possibly the weakest song on here, but it's okay. Love Machine, I'm guessing we can kind of figure out what that's talking about, is a pretty straightforward rocker, but it closes things out well, and Look at Yourself is overall a very solid album, and it is my favorite Uriah Heep album. And so I want to thank you all very much for joining me tonight. I got through that pretty painlessly, and it didn't take nearly as long as I thought it would. I really kind of shortened things up a bit, so I kind of had to. But just to recap once again, so you can kind of keep track of everything. Number 1, Look at Yourself. 2, very Eavy, very Umble. 3, Salisbury. 4, Demons and Wizards. 5, The Magician's Birthday. 6, Sweet Freedom. 7, Wonderworld. 8, Abominog. 9, Wake the Sleeper. 10, Into the Wild. 11, Livin The Dream. 12, Chaos and Color. 13, Outsider. 14, Firefly. 15, Head First. 16, Raging Silence. 17, Return to Fantasy. 18, High and Mighty. 19, Sea of Light. 20, Innocent Victim. 21, Fallen Angel. 22, Different World. 23, Sonic Origami. 24, Equator. And 25, it deserves to be here, Conquest. So anyways, thank you all for joining me tonight. I gotta say, it's been a long time since I rock and rolled, so I'll try to be back next week. But until then, have a very pleasant evening.